Hey guys and gals, it's Bobby Sylvester and Mike Tagliere of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. Today we're going to have Jamey Eisenberg of CBS Sports on to talk about his rankings, and we've got a news segment with Just Tags and I afterwards. But first we want to remind you about the Le'Veon Bell signed jersey giveaway that we're doing thanks to the sponsor of today's show, PristineAuction.com. The entry to the sweepstakes ends Sunday, so make sure to get them in. All you have to do, leave a review and subscribe on iTunes, then screenshot it over to us at contest@fantasypros.com. So, Tax, how many helmets have you splurged on since the last show?
Since the last show, honestly, I did bid on one. I did not win the item, but I did bid on it. Pristine Auction, as you guys know, as I've mentioned on the previous shows, that it's become one of my kind of like daily things because they have daily auctions where it's like there's these items that pop up daily. The one I lost this week, Bobby, was a David Johnson signed helmet.
Oh, that would be cool.
It would have been cool, and it was a daily auction, so you're able to have a chance at it another day. So I'm slowly working my wife towards the ability to let me kind of go at it again. But guys, make sure you do us a favor. Go over to PristineAuction.com. That is PRISTINE auction.com. As I mentioned before, they have daily auctions, hundreds of items up for grabs. You can get helmets, you can get jerseys, you can get all these things. All we ask is that you go there, let them know we heard about you guys on the Fantasy Pros podcast, and that way that we get credit for that, and then we're able to do more and more and more giveaways for you guys, like this Le'Veon Bell signed jersey, which it ends Sunday. You guys have been rock stars. We are up over 215 reviews now. I want to just thank each and every one. I don't know, but I keep getting emails basically about these contestants, and I'm like, wow, it's going to be harder to win this contest than I thought. And, you know, like I said, you guys, we do appreciate all the support. And again, this is a Le'Veon Bell signed jersey. It's an authentic signed jersey. That's who they work with at Pristine Auction. They only work with the most trusted sources. It's free to go on there and bid on items. Go there, check it out, register, tell them Fantasy Pros sent you, and we will do more giveaways.
Awesome, man. Let's get on to the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester with Mike Tagliere, and our guest today is Jamey Eisenberg of CBSSports.com. Hey Jamey, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
It's our pleasure. So, Jamey, I've got to say I'm a little unhappy with you right now since you sniped me like 6 times in our Dynasty draft a few weeks ago.
Well, that was my goal. When Mike invited me to the league, I said, as long as I can take all the players that Bobby wants, I'll be a very happy camper.
I'll say this, it made me feel a lot better about my rankings. For those of you who don't know that are listening in, and I'm sure you could have guessed it, Jamey's done quite well in our expert accuracy competition. He has 2 top 10 finishes for his draft rankings, including a number 1 finish, and he's always in the top quadrant of experts. So that's why we decided today to do the show based around Jamey's rankings. We'll be talking about who he likes more than the expert consensus and who he likes less than the expert consensus at this point in the preseason.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it, Jamey. Thanks for hopping on with us. Jamey, it's funny. We were having a conversation on Twitter today in regards to some nice people in the industry, and Jamey's one of the guys that I've had the pleasure of meeting, and he's a family guy just like myself, and I'm excited to talk some football. So what do you say we kick this thing off and talk about some quarterbacks? The number one that pops off, Jamey, I have to ask you about is because we are totally on different ends of the spectrum here. You have Tyrod Taylor as your number 21 quarterback. So I'm really curious to know, what's making you dislike Tyrod Taylor so much?
I wouldn't say it's a dislike, and I probably have him one spot too low. I probably should have him ahead of Blake Bortles as I'm looking at my rankings. That's a mistake. Now, the question I would have is, are we going off a 6-point per passing touchdown scoring format or a 4-point for passing touchdown?
We would do 4. We'll stick with 4. It's pretty much standard, yeah.
So we at CBS we usually go by 6. So that's why he's a little bit lower. In a 4-point per passing touchdown league, I do think he would be higher just based on his rushing ability, which would offset some of the passing stats that he might lack a little bit. So he would probably be closer to a top 15 guy for me in that type of scoring system. But I just think the lack of passing touchdowns based on how we score things versus the 4-point leagues is why he's a little bit lower. But I think he's going to have a good season if he is able to keep the job, as I hope he will. I don't think that Mr. Peterman will beat him out. But, you never know what will happen given his circumstances in a new coaching regime, new managerial regime there in Buffalo, and seeing how things shake out under Coach Sean McDermott.
The Bills are kind of crazy to me to even talk about doing that because he's been solid for them. I mean, I don't think he's going to win them a Super Bowl or even win any playoff games for them. I mean, the rest of their team is so crummy, they're not going to get to the playoffs as far as I'm concerned. But, he's done a serviceable job. I think he deserves to keep the job. So it would be crazy if he lost it. I understand what you're saying, Jamey. I mean, you look at these quarterbacks ranked 8 to 20, and they're all very similar. Like, what's the difference going to be? 35 points? So, it doesn't really concern me too much that you've got him at 21. I don't really regard him as a QB1. I know Tags loves him though.
Oh God, I have him as my number 7 quarterback. And it's funny because I think that there's even a ceiling for more. I mean, you mentioned it, Sean McDermott coming to town. Rex Ryan has probably the least friendly quarterback like fantasy scoring offense. He wants to run the ball. He did that a ton. Tyrod Taylor was near the league bottom in pass attempts. So I see it as only going north from there. But Tyrod Taylor is the type of guy that doesn't really need to throw the ball to score you fantasy points. On top of that, they brought in Zay Jones. There's rumors that Jeremy Maclin's looking to sign there. Sammy Watkins returned to practice today, which is huge news. And he looked really good. He was cutting on the foot. He was planning it in the ground. And I'm expecting big things from him. But even if we stay at mute, like last year, he was throwing to Robert Woods, Marquise Goodwin, and Walt Powell. Yet he finishes the number 7 fantasy quarterback in points per game. Same thing in 2015. So for me, Tyrod Taylor is essentially in a contract year with a contract franchise wide receiver in Sammy Watkins, with a new Zay Jones, possibly Jeremy Maclin, LaShawn McCoy is still there. So for me, I'm excited about Tyrod Taylor. And, you're not alone, Jamey. I could tell you that because his ADP, I want to say, is like around number 17 right now. But I'm just as I was last year, I'm high on Tyrod Taylor.
I think the one concern, or maybe two concerns, would be, are you going to trust him as much as Maclin signing there? I think would be clearly a different scenario. But would you trust him if it's just Zay Jones and Charles Clay and Andre Holmes and the other cast of characters they have there? I'm a big Sammy Watkins fan, so I agree with you. I know you just wrote a piece about him, and I'm on board. I think Sammy Watkins is going to have a big season. Which will obviously help Tyrod Taylor. But the other concern would be, aside from a Watkins injury, is a 4-game losing streak, a 5-game losing streak, and they just realize, okay, we're done and we're moving on from Tyrod Taylor. And then all of a sudden he's on the bench. And I think that's a scenario that could be very likely, given the team has not made the playoffs since the 1990s. There's a pretty significant track record there. And again, new coach, so there's no ties to Tyrod Taylor as much. Look, I talked to Sean McDermott at the owners meeting in March. I asked him, are you happy about Tyrod Taylor? And he, talked about his character, the fact that he made a phone call to him, congratulating him on getting the job. I think he's done the right things to hold on to the position, but you never know at what point that they're out of it, that they make a switch.
I mean, they wouldn't have drafted the quarterback if it wasn't on their mind, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he did get it done with like Robert Woods and all these characters last year, but again, I don't think that means he's going to keep the job. Now, Jamey, I love that you have Cam Newton down at 14. In fact, we've seen him slip from his number 6 ECR all the way to 10, but Tags and I talk about Cam Newton so much. So the one I want to ask you about is Ben Roethlisberger. Tags and I are notorious Ben Roethlisberger haters. We're going to talk about him a little bit later on the show once our segment here with Jamey's done. But you've got him up at number 8, and I'm wondering if you think he can stay healthy the whole year, or if you just think it's this cast of receivers he has to throw to.
I think it's the latter. At some point, you have to sort of take a step back from injuries. Guys that have track records are a little bit different, and you could say that he has a track record of what we saw, the last couple of seasons. But at some point, you have to say it's the NFL. At some point, there's probably going to be an injury for almost every player.
You're right.
But look at what they've surrounded him with Martavis Bryant coming back, with the addition of our good buddy Juju. The obvious monster in Antonio Brown, what Le'Veon Bell brings, as a pass catcher out of the backfield. And I know the home road splits are going to be, discussed anytime you talk about Ben Roethlisberger. But when you look at it at the end of the season, and we saw it last year a little bit, he started to turn the corner a little bit in terms of his road production. I know he had the bad Cleveland game, but he had he was able to at least have a semblance of a good performance in that game in Indianapolis. I love the back half of the schedule for the Steelers. I think that's going to lead to a lot of big games for him. And I just think that the Steelers are poised to make a Super Bowl run again. I don't know if they're going to get there because of the Patriots, but they're positioned, with what they've done defensively, what they have in place offensively. And so if you get 16 games from him, you probably want to ballpark it at 13 just to say maybe a game off at the end of the year if they've clinched, the 2 seed, because I don't think they're going to get the 1 seed. But if they are in the position that I expect them to be in, with the guys around Roethlisberger playing at the level that they're capable of playing, I think Ben's a top 10 quarterback again. And we frame it with a 6-point per passing touchdown league again. That takes a little bit of the difference maybe in where we're talking about how he's ranked.
Of course.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm with you. I'm in agreement with you in regards to, I think his road splits they'll come a little bit closer to what his average is once Martavis Bryant's back on the field, because that definitely helps. Adding Juju Smith-Schuster is somebody that can be a playmaker on that team. Eli Rogers flashed a little bit. They've never really had all these guys in the field at the same time. Like Martavis Bryant, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, I don't even know what the mix is, but I think they've only been on the field together a couple times in their career. So for me, Ben Roethlisberger, Jake Seeley was on the show earlier this week, and he mentioned that Roethlisberger in his schedule, it's 6 of his 8 home games are in the back half of the schedule. So that's basically where I'd want to own him. I do think that Ben Roethlisberger finishes as a top 10 quarterback if he plays all 16 games, but it's just the volatility going through it. So for me, if you draft Ben Roethlisberger, I'm willing to draft him around that 12 spot, 11 to 12, but I want to pair him with someone like a Tyrod Taylor, so I don't have to worry about those road struggles if Ben continues to do that.
Totally get it.
Now, Jamey, I want to move over to running backs, and there's one guy I just have to pick your mind on. I am in agreement with you fully on Mike Gillislee. You've got him up at number 18. For you guys listening at home, his ECR is number 29, and I think I'm actually going to move him higher than 18. I'm just falling in love with this guy. He's got the number 1 easiest schedule of strength for running backs. Jamey, can you talk about Mike Gillislee for a little bit?
Well, I think the thing with Gillislee, and I don't think it's earth-shattering to say this, is his touchdowns are going to probably make or break his fantasy production by the end of the season. He's stepping into what should be LeGarrette Blount's role. I know they added Rex Burkhead. Bill Belichick, I think it was either today or yesterday, spoke highly of Dion Lewis and how he's looking in his, must be his 3rd comeback now from, injury, but saying that he's building off of his comeback performance last year. James White's going to play in the passing downs role and maybe get a couple of carries, maybe a little bit more than what we saw last year, but I wouldn't necessarily anticipate that. But he's stepping into a role that had 18 touchdowns last year, and Gillislee did a great job as the backup to LaShawn McCoy. He had the big game against the Patriots when McCoy was out with an injury last year. And so with how that offense should perform, with the workload that Gillislee should get, and you look at it, when he's had carries, I forget the number, but he's been a productive fantasy back. You look at the Patriots, I know that everybody thinks, well, Bill Belichick plays these games, he toys with fantasy owners. But when he had Stephen Ridley playing at a high level, he leaned on him for 200-plus carries. When he had LeGarrette Blount last year playing at a high level, 299 carries. He's not afraid to give a guy work. And I think if Gillislee gets close to 200 carries, which is kind of where I would ballpark it, he should score around 10 touchdowns, if not more. And that's kind of what you're hoping for. If he gets close to 1,000 yards, I think it's just an easy selection, in that round 5-ish range.
It's by far the best situation for a running back like Gillislee to go into. I mean, they ran the ball far more than anyone else within the 5-yard line, far more than anyone else within the 10-yard line. I mean, you look at how many opportunities Blount had to score, and I think Gillislee's a better version. Since Gillislee's been in the NFL, there's been nobody with more yards per carry and over 150 carries than Mike Gillislee. I think he's quite a good running back, and it's just a perfect buy for Belichick. Very typical.
I love the boldness, Jamey. I have Gillislee myself at number 21. LeGarrette Blount wasn't very good last year. There's no way around that. I mean, I think a lot of fantasy players out there believe that LeGarrette Blount was actually a good football player last year. He wasn't.
He was good. He had him in the end zone.
But that's the thing is they run 2 tight end packages. When you're going up against Tom Brady and LeGarrette Blount on the goal line, who are you going to worry about? You're not going to worry about LeGarrette Blount. So I'm not saying he was bad on the goal line. He was good there. He did his job. But for me, Gillislee is a guy they went out and purposely they stole him from the Bills. The Bills, they tendered him at 5th round level, which was the stupidest thing. That just to save, I think it was a couple $100,000, they could have raised that tender. But the Patriots, this is like chess and checkers, what they're doing. What they did with Rex Burkhead, it was like $3 million a year. So it's not like it's a massive contract, like they signed Lamar Miller or something like that, like the Texans did last year. So for me, I think Mike Gillislee does walk into that role. I think he's one of the better goal line backs in football. And when I was doing my strength of schedule pieces, Mike Gillislee has one of the best schedules in the NFL in terms of running backs. Now, granted, that can change year over year, but it never hurts to see a better schedule than other people walking into it. So I'm with you, and I love the boldness having him up at number 16.
Thanks.
So, Tags, do you have a running back to ask him about?
I do, because so Jamey, I'm always trying to talk to smart people, basically trying to find out where I differ, why I'm high, why someone else is low on. And you mentioned about the article on Sammy Watkins. I also wrote an article, a player profile on Carlos Hyde. I'm a big Carlos Hyde fan. I think he's one of the best 1-2 down backs in football. I think he showed last year that he can catch the ball on third down. I think he was fine in that area. He's not like, he's not Joe Mixon. He's not Matt Forte, but he's serviceable there. He's not Rob Kelly. But you have him down at number 18 in your rankings. Is this more, are you concerned about Joe Williams? Are you concerned about it being a timeshare under Kyle Shanahan? I want to know what's going on and why you have Carlos Hyde a little bit lower than most.
All of the above, including the positives. I think he's a very good football player. I think he did show that he can be very serviceable. But it's the same thing, along the lines of Tyrod Taylor. When you have a new coach in place, and I did read your article, Mike, and it was a great job by you. I was, like I said, at the owners' meetings. I asked Kyle Shanahan about Carlos Hyde. This was before the NFL draft, before Joe Williams was there. I think it even may have been before Tim Hightower was there. I don't remember when they signed him. It seemed like it was after the free agent flurry, so he may not have been on the roster at the time. But you're just looking at the things that they've done. The fact that Kyle Shanahan begged John Lynch to draft Joe Williams, the fact that John Lynch said that, is he a fit for what they do? The fact that they traded for Capri Bibbs, that they signed Tim Hightower. It doesn't speak to, let's build our backfield around Carlos Hyde. It speaks to, okay, we're going to manage this, I don't know, by committee. If I was more down on him, he wouldn't be at 18. He'd be outside of my top 24. So I think there's going to be a lot of very good, if not great moments for Carlos Hyde. But I also think that if Joe Williams does what he's capable of doing, if they want to see if Capri Bibbs can maybe be a player for them outside of just a special teams guy, Tim Hightower, even in his advanced age, showed some flashes last year on 120 some odd carries, 155 touches for the Saints, and proved that he could be a capable guy. So will he get the 20 plus touches, 20 plus carries that we saw under Chip Kelly on a team that probably will throw the ball a little bit more than a Chip Kelly offense? If Shanahan has his ways, especially if they're trailing. They have a tough schedule. So it just doesn't lead to Carlos Hyde building off of what he did last year. It feels like he's going to regress, and that's why I have him ranked where I do.
Fair enough.
Now, another running back I'd like to talk about. It seems like whenever we do these shows, there's always one or two guys who slip through the cracks. We've been doing a couple shows per week for over a month, and I don't think we've mentioned Paul Perkins' name once. Now, Perkins is a player that you have quite a bit higher than consensus at number 20. Consensus is down at 28. And really, I don't know too much about the guy. I'm not very excited about him. I don't know anyone that is. So that's why I want to pick your brain and see what's going on here.
Opportunity. I think you look at it last year, he showed some flashes in the last 4 games of the season when they finally realized that Rashad Jennings is better off on a reality TV show than he is as an NFL running back. And so, when they realized that they can, lean on Perkins a little bit, I liked what I saw. I know it's not great, but, he's dealing with Shane Vereen, who we know is a third down back. Wayne Gallman is a guy that, is could get some touches, could get an opportunity, another player that they drafted, but they had the chance, at least based on rumor, to bring in Adrian Peterson or sign him. They didn't do that. They could have made another move, and they still might, to acquire a running back. I don't think anybody that they're going to bring in will take Paul Perkins off the top of the depth chart. I like the fact that, the reports are he's improving as a blocker. It's May and June, so we're going to hear glowing reports about players that are put in prime spots like Paul Perkins. But this is a team that has a great defense, as we saw last year. I still think the offense has room to grow if the offensive line can be better, which I think it will be from what we saw last year. They're going to be in games where he may not be on the field a ton, but I don't know where he comes off on rushing downs, or at least for who. I don't think it's Orleans Darkwa or Sean Drone. I don't think those are guys that are going to take him off the field in those spots. It'll be him and Vereen until something happens. And, again, if he stays healthy for 16 games, this is a guy that should be 200 plus carries. If he can stay around 4 yards per carry, if he can catch, close to 30 passes, I think he'll score 6+ times. So that'll put him in the range of a top 20-ish guy.
That's a great point.
So it's just a matter of, looking at the rest of the roster and the team that he's on.
And the Giants have been touting him as a 3-down back actually this week, and I picked him up in a few MFL 10s. In the 6th, 7th round is where you're basically getting him, and you're getting a workhorse running back. And his situation, Jamey, it reminds me a lot of Devonta Freeman. If you guys recall, his rookie year, he didn't do too much. He was actually a lot worse than Perkins was in his rookie year, and nobody was really excited. They were all talking about the rookie, Tevin Coleman, coming in, and then Coleman got hurt. He wasn't playing very well even in his rookie season, but Devonta Freeman took off, finishes the number 1 running back in all of football. So I'm not saying that Paul Perkins is that, because Paul Perkins can remind you a little bit of Devonta Freeman. He just doesn't have the speed that Devonta Freeman does. Paul Perkins doesn't have any breakaway speed. The offensive line in Atlanta wasn't great until this past year though. So I'm not going to write off Devonta Freeman. I think he's a top 5 running back in all of football. I've said that on this show before, but I do like the Paul Perkins call. I'm happy to hear that we're on the same level here. One more running back before we move to wide receiver. Just on a quick hit on this one. You have Kareem Hunt higher than Spencer Ware. I'm curious on this one.
Love it.
This to me feels like Chicago a year ago. And it's something I want to spend some time on. Maybe you guys have talked about it. Mike, maybe you studied this a little bit. How many running backs have we seen in the course of NFL history, at least recent history? And maybe it's a lot. I was thinking out loud on one of our podcasts about a week or two ago, where the guy that got the majority of work for over the course of a season because of an injury over the next couple of years was still very good, if not great. And Spencer Ware had some very good moments last year at the beginning part of the season, really before he had the concussion. He looked like he was ready to be, a superstar in this league, but he got the job by default. Jamal Charles was supposed to be their guy last year. We know about the knee injury in the beginning of preseason and training camp, and he couldn't make it out at the start of the year, and Spencer Ware was able to hold on to the job. But another situation where they kind of made it clear that they're going to bring in competition. And why do you bring in competition? To see if somebody's better. So I think Spencer Ware is a good player. I don't know if he's an elite talent. And I don't know if Kareem Hunt's an elite talent. He showed a lot of good things in college. There's a reason, though, he was a 3rd round pick as opposed to a 1st or 2nd round pick. But, again, you want to talk about reports. I like what they said about him. I think it was as early as today. They're throwing a lot at him to see what he can handle. He seems to be picking everything up as expected. And I think you're going to see at some point, like we saw last year in Chicago, which is why I bring up that example, where Jeremy Langford was kind of just a guy and Jordan Howard was more or less a superstar. Again, I don't know if Kareem Hunt can ascend to those type of heights, but I do think that by the time the year is over, he will be the best running back in Kansas City.
That's interesting you say that, though, because the thing is, Charkandrick West, if you recall, back in the 2015 season, he had a few games before Spencer Ware ultimately they started sharing the workload, and then Spencer Ware kind of surpassed him. So it's definitely possible. Andy Reid is not against, taking Spencer Ware off the field and putting in Kareem Hunt. I happen to be a Spencer Ware supporter, but I'm with you. That's where the concern is, and I've dropped Ware a little bit down my boards because I am concerned about that. I think that's one of the true ones we need to pay attention to in the preseason. Agree. Whereas Carlos Hyde, Joe Williams, I'm sold on Hyde. I'm sold on CJ Anderson. I'm not worried about his workload, but this is one definitely to pay attention to.
I would say Green Bay also. That's another one you want to keep an eye on to see how that's going to shake out too.
Jamal Williams. I'm a big Jamal Williams fan. I just think that Ty Montgomery might be a better fit for what they're trying to do right now.
I love Aaron Jones.
I know there's a lot of people that I know we've talked about on this show before about Aaron Jones and stuff like that. So I don't want to get too much into that, but it's definitely a situation where you want to own a running back who's going to have plenty of goal line opportunities. I mean, you would imagine in the Green Bay offense where they just score seemingly 30 points per game every single year. Bobby, let's get into some wide receivers before Jamey's got to get out of here.
Absolutely. Yeah, the guy I want to ask you about, Corey Davis. I haven't seen anyone having him as high as 25. And I mean, I've heard glowing reports about Corey Davis. I don't know a ton about him. We haven't seen him on the field against anyone with a ton of talent. I mean, you look at who he played in college, and it wasn't all that impressive. What are you hearing about Corey Davis that has him so high?
Well, you look at the track record of receivers that were drafted in the top 10, especially in the last 5 years. It's a pretty good track record. I think it kind of speaks to what this Titans passing attack is and what it needs. And, I like Rashard Matthews. I live in South Florida. I got a chance to see him, when he was wanting to force his way out of Miami 2 years ago because of Devontae Parker's injury and some other things that unfolded that season. He got off to a very good start before hurting his shoulder. So I was glad to see him have some success in Tennessee last year. He was a top 15 receiver, and I don't know if he's that much of a great talent. 9 touchdowns is nice to see. He had, a very solid performance, especially after he complained about not getting the ball. But this is a team that needs an upgrade at that position. And I think you look at size, you look at speed, you look at numbers, competition surely comes into play with what we saw from Corey Davis in the MAC. But I think there's a talent level there that will help him produce at the next level. Is he going to be a top 25 receiver? That remains to be seen. But I don't think anybody would have said Rashard Matthews would have been a top 25 receiver either a year ago. So with the way that this team is going to run the ball, that's going to really leave a lot of single coverage on the table for him. I think we saw Mariota take the next step last year. I think he'll take another step this year, especially with the pieces around him. I really like what Tennessee is doing. I think they could easily be the best team in a very competitive AFC South. And I think that Corey Davis is going to be a big reason why.
No, that's a very good point. I love the points. And Tennessee, this offseason, they weren't quiet about it. They said, we need to upgrade the wide receiver position. They weren't happy with Tajay Sharp. They obviously, Rashard Matthews did a fine job, but they obviously weren't happy enough to say that he's our number one. They went out and spent their top pick. They had 2 first-round picks, and it's funny because I said Corey Davis was going to go to Tennessee. I just didn't think that they'd take him with the number 5 pick, which they did. Sure. But they wanted to make sure they got their guy. And I'm a huge Corey Davis fan, and I hope you're right, Jamey, because I ended up grabbing Corey Davis in our Startup Dynasty draft that we just did a couple weeks ago.
You took every rookie, so that was
I kind of did, didn't I? I mean, I ended up with Corey Davis. I have John Ross. I have so many rookies, but I feel like my team is set up well, and I think Davis is a mini Brandon Marshall. I think he's a Brandon Marshall in the making. So definitely like your call there. The one player I see you're way low on that again, I just want to see where I'm at, where you're at. Stephon Diggs, you have him down at number 38. And this is a guy that when he was healthy last year, he was almost dominant. You know what I mean? And they started moving him into the slot more often, which means he's not going to see some of the top tier cornerbacks that he would if he was playing on the perimeter. So, why are you lower on Stephon Diggs? Is it an injury concern?
It's an injury concern. It's a production concern. I think you've seen, like you said, there's been some good performances. There hasn't been a lot of great performances put together over a 6-game span, over an 8-game span. We've seen, maybe a 4-game span here or there over the last couple of seasons. I'm not the biggest Sam Bradford guy. I think that could get messy if Teddy Bridgewater's healthy. How that will all shake out. This is another team that continues to try and find answers at the receiver spot, not necessarily to replace Stephon Diggs, but just to find answers in the passing game. I mean, they take a flyer on Michael Floyd. They've been trying almost every year. I know it's, again, different coaching staff, different regime, but you go from Cordarrelle Patterson, Charles Johnson. We've kind of had this cycle of Minnesota receivers. Adam Thielen had some good moments last year as well. I kind of just think Diggs is who he is. He's a slot receiver. I don't think that will score a lot of touchdowns. I think he's at best the poor man's Jarvis Landry, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know that that's a high ceiling for him. He feels to me like one of these guys that fantasy analysts get more excited about, I think, than the general public. And I don't necessarily expect him to take the next step. He's a third-year receiver. I'm still an old-school guy. I believe in that theory that guys take the next step in their third year. I hope it happens for him, but this is still an offense. Look what they did. They go out and they draft a guy in Dalvin Cook. I think they want to still be, Mike Zimmer's kind of, you always see it with defensive coaches. They still want to lean on their ground game. They want to lean on their defense. They don't want to necessarily put the ball in their quarterback's hand and let him make a lot of plays. That's kind of where they were last year, with the short area passing game. Kyle Rudolph is going to be a guy that dominates in the red zone. So I just don't know if Stephon Diggs has that elite level talent. I think he's just kind of a guy.
Fair enough.
I'm with Jamey on this one. I mean, hey, you look at his games. He had like 3 great games, and they were all against banged up defenses. I think we've seen enough of him. He's kind of like the Isaiah Crowell of wide receivers without the opportunity.
Don't start with me. Don't start with that. No, get out of here. Diggs is actually an athlete. No, but I mean, I'm not as high as some on Diggs. Like some people have Diggs as high as like number 14 wide receiver. Where I'm in that middle. I'm willing to draft him right in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range, like right at that teeter totter, like 23, 24 ish. And I'm drafting him there based on I think there's upside for more, but I think that his floor is wide receiver 3 level in that offense. I think Sam Bradford, what he wants to do, what they want him to do in that offense, I just think it works out for him. I think we could see a few targets come away from Kyle Rudolph. As you know, he is a great value, but at the same time, I don't think he's going to lead the NFL in targets again at the tight end position. So
no, but just keep in mind a couple of things. Sam Bradford's a tight end guy. The offensive coordinator promoted from the tight end position coach a year ago, Pat Shurmur, kept the job. That's a guy that he knows very well. And it may not be the total targets, but the red zone targets, the red zone production. I don't see Stephon Diggs necessarily being a red zone threat. I think that's where Kyle Rudolph will still be a very viable, if not dominant force for the Vikings.
That's fair. And you said it, Pat Shurmur. You said the whole Pat Shurmur thing. And Pat Shurmur is the one who actually decided to move Stephon Diggs into the slot more of a full-time role. So that's obviously the role he's going to have going forward. So maybe we bump Stephon Diggs in PPR leagues, maybe lower him a little bit in standard.
Agree.
All right, we've got time for two more quick ones. The one I want to ask you about, Emmanuel Sanders. You've got him at 34. ECR is at 23. And I'm with you on this one. I just hate the Denver passing game.
It's the same thing that we, kind of said about Stephon Diggs. He had 4 good games last year, Emmanuel Sanders, and he was awful in almost every single other game that he played.
Yes.
And so take Peyton Manning away from this team, and Emmanuel Sanders' numbers have sort of been inflated by a few big games. He had the huge game against Pittsburgh, you could say revenge game in that regard. I still think this is Demaryius Thomas passing attack, and Emmanuel Sanders will, by the end of the year. I just don't like these end of the year guy type of numbers. I'd rather take the chance on, let's say Corey Davis having 5 or 6, 7 or 8 great games, and being a rookie the rest, over Emmanuel Sanders kind of, every now and then he pops up and has this big game, but you've been starting him every season because you drafted him to be your wide receiver too. I mean, he said it himself going into last year, my numbers are going to decline. I think that's kind of where he is. So he'll be 75 catches, he'll be 1,000 yards, he'll be 4 or 5 touchdowns, but it'll never be that string together type of performance like we saw 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when he was, first year in Denver and playing at a high level. I think he's being extremely overdrafted.
Yeah, and on top of that, he's 31. He's 31 years old this year. Jamey, before you get out of here, the last one is this is a high five through the air. I've been giving you a lot of guys that you and I differ on, but this is one where we in total agreement. So we're going to team up on Bobby here. You and I both have Doug Baldwin in our top 12, and you have Keenan Allen at number 23. Bobby said on the podcast earlier in the week that he would take Keenan Allen over Doug Baldwin. Now, can you please tell this man that he's nuts?
I mean, look, I like Keenan Allen. I feel bad for him because the lacerated kidney, that's something you can't foresee for any player. Same thing with Andrew Luck. The ACL injury, that's a common thing clearly, but he's a guy that just feels like a little bit snake bitten. And you see what they did this offseason. They had an opportunity to address their defense. I think the Chargers have a chance to be a surprise team in the AFC West and potentially win that division, but adding a wide receiver to a team that had Keenan Allen, that had Tyrell Williams, that had Travis Benjamin and Dontrell Inman, that had Hunter Henry and Antonio Gates, it wasn't a need for them unless, of course, they feel, A, Tyrell Williams is not very good, which could be the case, and he just kind of, snuck his way into a 1,000-yard season, or B, they're concerned about Keenan Allen staying on the field and being back to the level he was pre-ACL. So I think just, you get crowded situations versus uncrowded situations. Who's Doug Baldwin's competition? Tyler Lockett coming off of a broken leg. Maybe we see Paul Richardson continue to make some plays. Obviously, Jimmy Graham is there, and they want to run the ball. But I think Doug Baldwin, I was skeptical of him after what we saw 2 years ago that he could do it again, and he did it again. He had, similar to the Emmanuel Sanders, Stephon Diggs talk, some very big games. But by the end of the year, when you see 94 catches, when you see, 1,100 yards, you see 6, 7 touchdowns, I think that's going to be where he is, and hopefully he spreads it out a little bit more as opposed to the couple huge games. He's a little bit more consistent. But he's Russell Wilson's number one guy. Keenan Allen should be the number one guy for the Chargers, but a lot of mouths to feed for Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, you're right. You're really scaring me. I mean, Tags, if you wanted to convince me of this, you should have just had Jamey on a lot earlier.
Well, no, just wait. These player profiles I've been doing, Keenan Allen is going to come out next week. I think on Monday I'm putting him out. So, Bobby, I'm going to ruin your week next week.
Not looking forward to it. Well, Jamey, that's all the time we have. We really appreciate having you on the show. It was a blast as always.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks, guys. Hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Sounds great.
Definitely. We'll talk to you soon, Jamey.
Man, Tags, I tell you what, Jamey's just a great guy. Every time he comes on, I learn so much from him. And it's like these super talented guys like Jamey Eisenberg, who have over 100,000 followers on Twitter, are just so generous with their time and always encourage others in the industry. I just love this fantasy community, Tags.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a giving community. If you want to be liked and you want to be loved, you can go there and you could sit at the cool kids table. You could talk with everybody. Everybody is so accessible. And Jamey is one of the guys that, when I initially got into the industry, he was one of the first big names I met. And it was just this nervousness came through me. And I had my wife with me and she talked to him. I talked to him. And it was just literally just the guy next door that you're talking to while you're out, just BSing in front of your house. Jamey's a really cool, down to earth dude, and he is one of those guys where you sit down and you talk logically about football. You don't have to go over any script or anything. You just talk about football, and that's my favorite. I love that.
So for those of you listening at home, I get asked several times a week, how to get your foot in the door to work in fantasy sports. And, it is really tough. You have to work really hard. But if you want to do it, I think the best way to start, and I'm not just saying this because I'm with Fantasy Pros, but we have a really great opportunity for you guys. You can become a Fantasy Pros correspondent. So it's like writing fantasy football news. And the news desk of our website is powered by a lot of talented and diligent men and women trying to make a name for themselves. And you can try to be part of it. We're always looking to give fresh faces their crack at proving themselves. So just go to our website, and down at the bottom of the homepage, you'll see application. Fill it out, work hard, and maybe it'll work for you. Maybe you'll be a fantasy expert talking about it on a podcast someday.
If that's the thing, is if you really want to do it, you can do it. I watched the movie, Bobby, have you ever seen the movie The Family Man with Nicolas Cage?
No.
You should, because it's a fantastic movie, first and foremost. I love that movie. And I know not nobody likes Nicolas Cage. I get that, but it's a great movie. And
you're showing your age tags.
He basically tells people, and rather than going through the whole thing, he says, I will work for your company. I will start washing cars if I have to. And I will work my way up because I know that I can do this job. And if you're one of those people that knows you can do this job, this is literally just a foot in the door. This is all you need to do it. And you build a name, you build a brand. And
exactly.
You kind of go from there. And I get excited talking about this stuff because I remember the journey and I still love it to this day.
I don't think, besides like getting married and having kids, like the family stuff, I can't really think of anything more exciting than when I was interviewing for Fantasy Pros. Like, man, is it possible that I can get my dream job? Like, I can't believe they're even interviewing me and they're considering me. Like, what in the world? And then when I found out I was getting the job, like, man, I was so giddy for I don't know, how long have I been working here? 18 months. I've been so giddy for 18 months, it hasn't stopped.
No, that's awesome. That's the thing. Is we're living out our dream, and we did it because of hard work, and that's what I'm saying. If you're listening right now and you want to do that, don't think that it's too big. Don't think that anything's too hard. If you're willing to put in the work, just go for it.
Yeah, fantasy football is huge. We can use as many riders as we can possibly get. If you're good, we'll be glad to have you, and you can start proving yourself with baseball right now. That's a good way to start. Okay, so we're going to be playing this new game, Over Under. So Tags introduced his game a few weeks ago. Name that player, that segment, the one where I'm the undefeated reigning champion. And I've got a game for Tags today. And no, he's not going to be competing against someone, but I want you all to let him know on Twitter at Mike Tagliere NFL what you think about his answers. So the pressure's on, Tags. Are you ready?
I am ready. I'm always ready to get ridiculed on Twitter. So let's bring it.
Oh, by the way, I decided to grade you, and it's up to my own discretion. So good luck here.
Oh, this is gonna be a blast.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you a number statement. You have to tell our listeners whether you think the actual result is gonna be over or under. It's pretty simple, and you guys can play at home too. Shoot me a tweet at Bobby Fantasy Pro. Let me know what you think about these, and maybe we'll have some fun conversation on Twitter. The first one here for you, Tags: over or under? Gronkowski plays 11.5 games.
Over. I'm betting on Gronk to play at least 14 games this year. I'm always betting against the trend. And for people doubting Gronkowski, I think he's going to be back. I think he's going to be back with a vengeance. He had a surgery. Everything is good. I am betting over.
It's like his 20,000th surgery, though. He says he's 100%, but how many more is he going to get this year? 5? Even if he does get 5, he still might be the best tight end in football, but man, he just gets hurt so much. He's only 28 years old?
Yep.
We could still see the best version of Rob Gronkowski this year.
Yeah, he's only a year older than Travis Kelce, which when I say that, people are like, no way. And I'm like, it's true. This is the stuff I look at. So yeah, Gronk's not that old. It's just people talked about the retirement thing last year because of the surgeries and the 69 touchdowns and all that. Funny enough, I have him projected for 69 receptions this year.
Wow. I'll tell you what. I am buying into Gronkowski more and more every week. His ECR is right now around 22 or something. If it came down to it, I would actually feel comfortable taking him at number 12. And I know I will get laughed at by everyone for saying that. But look, if Rob Gronkowski's healthy, I've said this several times, if Rob Gronkowski is healthy the whole season and he's on your team, you're in the playoffs for sure. And you have a huge advantage in the playoffs. He's first and second tier all by himself for tight ends, and there's no one even close when he's healthy.
Yeah, no, Gronk he's untouchable. In my projections, like I said, when I talk about those 24 more standard points than everybody else in the rankings, so it's just if I can guarantee 16 games, I'd draft Gronk right at the start of the second round.
Another Patriots player, and oddly, this is somebody else that I'm starting to fall in love with. We already talked about him, Mike Gillislee, and I guess maybe I'm a Patriots fan now. My dad, who's probably listening to the show, is going to be really excited because he's a big Patriots fan. Grew up in the Boston area, and Chris Harris, if you guys know the Christopher Harris podcast, he's a Patriots fan. So I'm going to be talking to them a little bit about Gronk and Gillislee just to make sure I'm not too crazy. But Mike Gillislee scores 10.5 touchdowns this year, Tags. Over or under?
Oh, man. I have to say under because it's not likely for many running backs to score more than 10 touchdowns, but it really would not shock me if he scored 11 or more touchdowns. I mean, I'll take the under. If I had to bet and I'm a betting man or whatever, I would say the under. Just because there's so many running backs in that backfield. I think James White is undervalued. Rex Burkhead was obviously brought in for some sort of reason. Deion Lewis isn't going away. So for me, Andrew Hawkins was just signed. Julian Edelman was just extended for 2 years. I really don't know what the Patriots are really doing.
They're going to put out two teams, one in the NFC, one in the AFC, and both teams are going to win their conference and play in the Super Bowl just so Belichick can show how good he is.
Oh, only if they can somehow clone Bill Belichick and put him on the other team, then sure, they could do that.
Yeah, he can definitely just coach both teams. He doesn't need a clone.
Yep, Garoppolo can quarterback the second team, right?
Yeah, man, can you imagine that other offense? I mean, I don't know about the offensive line, but they have so many skill players. Like, they legitimately have another NFL team behind Tom Brady and Edelman and Cooks and Gronk and all these guys.
Yeah, Malcolm Mitchell, Chris Hogan, Danny Amendola would be your starting receivers. We talked about the running backs. The backup tight end would be Dwayne Allen. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Garoppolo
That's
is the quarterback.
Way better than the Browns and the Jets.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's better than them, but the Jets, yes, the Jets 100% yes, but not the Browns are on their way to doing good things.
All right, next one. I really like this one. It kind of reminds me of last year. I was really high on Dante Moncrief. I'm sure a lot of you guys listening remember that, and it didn't work out because of his injury. I mean, he did score a lot of touchdowns, and I like Moncrief again this year, but Moncrief was ranked like 70 ECR at the start of the preseason. I just kept hyping him up, and all of a sudden he's being drafted around 40, and I'm just like, I'm not going to draft him in any leagues anymore. There's just these guys every year who their ADP just soars because they get so much hype. And this year, I think the guy's going to be Samaje Perine. Over under, does his ADP rise to 60?
I'm going to say yeah. I'm going to say it does. The only reason I'm saying that is because I believe he takes over as a starting running back in the preseason. I think that's when they're going to start grooming him as such. Now, granted, if we don't hear that he's the starter in the preseason, I'm not going to draft him near that range because I've mentioned it on the show before. He is going to take over as the starting running back at some point, but you have to remember.
I draft him like 110. But if he is the starting running back, like, why not take him 35 for real?
That's it. No, that's the truth. If he takes over the starting running back position, he should be drafted in the top 60. And if he doesn't, then that means he's not the starter. So therefore, it really depends on the news that comes out. But I'll say that he's going to be drafted inside the top 60 because I do believe that we're going to start seeing little tea leaves that say that he's going to be the starter.
All right, so last year, Tags, David Johnson had 2,100 yards from scrimmage. So over under 2,100 yards for David Johnson again this season.
Under 100%. I think David Johnson he's in a regression candidate. And granted, David Johnson, this doesn't make him any less of a player, but he was so involved. He was touching the ball. I remember that game against the Jets. Didn't he touch the ball like 40 times? It was something like that in that overtime
There's
game.
no way a running back can do this back-to-back years. I refuse to believe it.
No, he just posted something the other day of a screenshot with him basically with his shirt off. And the dude is like, it looks like, I don't even know how he runs as fast as he does because he's built. Like, he is a muscle machine. But if there's somebody that I'm going to bet that reaches 2,100 yards this year, it's Le'Veon Bell.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm with you on Le'Veon Bell. I mean, Le'Veon Bell has more injury risk, so there's probably less of a chance. But, if they're both healthy, I think Le'Veon Bell is going to get more yards from scrimmage. And I'll say this, I mean, David Johnson, he seems like he's healthy, but any running back any year has like a 30% chance to miss at least 4 games. It's just the way that the NFL works. So, I mean, we're already talking about a 30% chance that he doesn't even get a chance at 1,500. I would bet the under. Now, it's possible he'll get like 2,500 yards, but I'm not betting on it.
Well, no, right, definitely. Well, the thing is my concern for David Johnson this year is that he's the show in town. You know what I mean? Larry Fitzgerald's coming up on 34 years old, if I'm not mistaken. John Brown, I like John Brown, but he's not exactly the type of receiver like Julio Jones that's going to command double, triple teams. He's not that guy. David Johnson is the center of attention, and this year, whereas Le'Veon Bell is not, I'm not saying he's not a center of attention, but when you have Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, Juju Smith-Schuster out there, he's not going to be the only focus on the field, whereas with the Cardinals, David Johnson is basically the only show in town right now. So that's my concern for David Johnson. He was coming, when it came to running the ball, he was slowing down a little bit as the season went on. So I have my concerns about him. Like I said, doesn't make him any less of a player, but I would definitely say under.
You know, you're talking about guys with their shirt off being absolutely ripped. Like, David Johnson is really strong, but he looks like a little tiny, like, second grader compared to Christine Michael. Have you seen this dude? He looks like an alien, not even a real person.
Christine Michael, it's so odd to me why he, and I know he latched on with the Colts now, but it's really so odd because he was legitimately the best running back on the Seattle Seahawks last year.
Yeah.
If you go back and look through all the numbers.
And then they just cut him in the middle.
They did, and that's where it makes me believe there was something off the field. I don't know what it was. Maybe he didn't pick up blitzes like they wanted him to. I don't know what the case was because the Seahawks wouldn't just cut a talented running back like that. But then again, he didn't latch on with the Packers after that, and now he's with the Colts. But I don't know what's going on with him because when he's on the field, when he's actually with the ball in his hands, Christine Michael is a decent running back. But this is something that this is beyond us as analysts, as fans. This is something on the NFL level where he's been passed along. I think he went to the Redskins for a short time. He went to the Cowboys. He went to the Packers, Seahawks twice. So for me, Christine Michael, I don't know. I can't explain it.
He was probably just making them all like feel bad about their bodies. Or, he was like hurting people when he was doing chest bumps or something. That's probably why they all cut him.
Get out of here, Christine Michael. You're too ripped.
All right, so over under times you draft Christine Michael, 0.5.
0.
So you're not buying this. Frank Gore's 34 and he's a little bit.
Oh, I'm buying that.
He's not very good, and Christine Michael's going to get his chance.
On RB needy teams, especially like the Seahawks, the team that needs running backs, on teams like the Packers, they drafted a couple running backs. Like these are teams that like actually needed running backs that didn't hold on to them. So for me, no, especially when you're talking about the Colts, who the biggest concern is protecting Andrew Luck. And if these teams are letting him go or not letting him play on third down, whatever the case is, there's a reason for this. I think there's a reason the Colts drafted Marlon Mack, and if I'm taking a chance on any Colts backup running back, it's Marlon Mack because he has the greatest upside there. Yeah.
We've been talking about the awakening for like 20 years and Josh Gordon, but like, what if this is the year where nobody talks about Christine Michael and then he wins like the MVP?
I mean, I have him on a couple dynasty rosters, like deep rosters where I won't drop him just because of the fact that there's always that glimmer of hope that we have because, as I mentioned, he's very talented with the ball in his hands, but my hopes are low.
That's the same as drafting him in my book. So you basically cheated. That's like minus 5 points right there.
I would sell him. Right now. So if you're in a dynasty league with me and I have Christine Michael, come approach me. I will sell him to you if you give me something worthwhile. I don't know.
This is one I'm really intrigued by, Tags. At the end of my drafts, we'll talk about this on another show, I'm sure. I'm actually going to write an article about it. But I refuse to draft a kicker unless I'm drafting like the night before. Because, like, so what? You just pick up a kicker the night before the season starts, and you can have a backup running back that you hold on for 3-4 weeks. Maybe the running back gets hurt, and then he steps in. So I always draft, like, 9-10 running backs, and I know it's a little bit crazy, but one of the backup running backs that I just love this year is James Conner, because Le'Veon Bell just gets hurt so much. It's a great system, and I think James Conner's talented. So over under, James Conner starts 2.5 games.
Again, I mentioned it with Gronk. I usually bet against the grain, and so when people expect Le'Veon Bell to miss games, I don't. I'm not gonna project that for him. So for me, James Conner, I'm with you in the fact that he's a great handcuff. Now, I know that there are some people, including one of the guys that I respect in this industry, JJ Zachariason. He talks about it all the time about how handcuffing 101 that doesn't work, and but then there's other people that I respect like Sigmund Bloom, where say that James Conner on your bench is a league winner potentially. And I am on Sig's side of this because I believe that there's certain running backs that are clear-cut backups that if the starter goes down, and especially someone like Le'Veon Bell who's been suspended, who's been injured.
Think about what D'Angelo Williams did when he was the running back.
Exactly.
James Conner, I think, is probably more talented than D'Angelo Williams.
I don't know if I would. I mean, I won't say that he is or he isn't, but I'm saying the system, it's rare in the NFL to find a team that is willing to give one running back the entire load. And the Steelers are that team. If you remember, not last year, but 2 years ago, Fitzgerald Toussaint in the playoffs, I played him in DFS. I knew that because the Steelers, that's what they do. They have a one running back system. That's why D'Angelo Williams, that's why he finished as good as he did. That's why Le'Veon Bell has a chance to break records this year, because they're willing to put everything on one running back. So if something does happen to Le'Veon Bell, James Conner is a league winner. Like, that's what he offers you on your bench. So I would rather stash someone like him than someone like, I don't know, Wendell Smallwood, who would get maybe like 10 to 12 touches per game. So yeah, I'm with you that I like Conner. I just can't say that I'm going to project Le'Veon Bell to miss 3 games. So I would say under 2.5 games starting.
Let me ask you this, okay, Tags? What if we knew James Conner was going to start 12 games? How high would you draft him?
I would say he's like a high-end RB2. I would draft him in the 3rd round if I was guaranteed 12 games out of James Conner starting.
Yeah, I'm with you. I might draft him a little higher than that. And that's what I'm saying is, like, there's probably a 10% chance that happens. It's just the way the NFL goes.
I hope not, because I think we would be robbed of. Think
about
robbed.
it. There's 32 starting running backs in the NFL, and 3 of them end up missing probably 12 weeks, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, man, I hate talking about injuries just because I don't ever wish that.
I know, I
upon
feel
anybody.
terrible about it.
And I think Le'Veon Bell is like a special running back. I think he's got so much patience. And it is, the Steelers' offensive line is one of the underrated offensive lines in football. They are extremely, extremely good. But Le'Veon Bell, I think if he got hurt and he missed 12 games, I think we would be robbed of seeing potential greatness. And I mean that when I say that. I think if I were to pick it this year, I think that 2 players can break records, where him, total yards, and Julio Jones, the total yardage record. I think that those are my 2 favorite players in the NFL right now.
You know, it would just be one of those situations, like, even if my greatest rival had Le'Veon Bell on their team, I would just be sad if he got hurt. You know, just one of those things that kind of just ruins football.
Oh, yeah, no, it does. And you know what's funny is, like, you realize the type of friends you have when stuff like that happens. So Julio Jones, when he had his second foot injury, I think it was 2013, when he started out the year, first 6 games, he was hot. Like, he was the MVP of fantasy. And he hurt his foot again, and they shut him down for the season. I was at work that day, and I remember I got like 5 different text messages from league mates saying, "Sorry, Mike, sorry to hear the news." And I was like, what happened? And then I go and I checked my phone, and Julio Jones was announced out for the year. So they were all basically saying, sorry, that really sucks that you just lost basically the best player in the NFL. So,
all right, we've got 4 more here. You're not doing so well on your score, by the way, so you're going to have to pick it up. Over under, Larry Fitzgerald finishes as a top 25 wide receiver.
Oh, is this PPR or standard?
Both.
Standard.
I want an answer to both. I'm giving you a chance at extra credit.
Standard, no. PPR, yes. I think he's right there in that. I think he's teetering in both, but I think that he's out in standard on PPR.
I'm with you on that. You get 2 points for that one, so you're like
nice.
-2 now. You've got a chance to go positive here, and you could nail one of these. Like, I'll probably give you like 20 points if you get one of these. Over under. Times you'll wish you were a Jaguars fan instead of a Bears fan this year. 165.
Oh, so how many days out of the year? Or the football season?
No, how many times, like, you have a moment where you think, man, I wish I was a Jaguars fan instead of a Bears fan.
I don't know if I would say, God, I'll say 5. I'll say 5.
Wow, yeah, lose more points.
I say that because I don't think that the Jaguars are I think that they're a great team that's ready to, like, literally make that jump, kind of like the Chargers are. They're that deep sleeper that everybody wants to pick, but the problem is they don't have a quarterback. And I know that everyone wants to talk about Blake Bortles, and Scott Barrett brought up the fact on the show the other day that he had shoulder surgery, which I did not know. That could definitely contribute to some problems, but again, I didn't see.
Remember Andrew Luck when he had shoulder issues? I mean, maybe Blake Bortles is a superhero.
Oh, God.
And we just don't know because he had shoulder issues.
No. Andrew Luck is a superhero, though. Andrew Luck is going to be... He's a guy, a quarterback that could throw for 5,000 yards and 40, 50 touchdowns.
Yep, you're exactly right. And, I knew you were going to make fun of Blake Bortles when I brought up that question, which is why I set you up. Because the next question, over or under, For the third straight year, Blake Bortles will finish as a top 9 quarterback.
That is, no, that will not happen. There's too many.
How did he do that last year? I thought he was horrible.
It's just volume. It's strictly volume and how often the team was down. And honestly, he scored a lot of the points via rushing. People don't realize how many rushing points that Blake Bortles had. But that's the thing, is now we're at the point where it's a new coaching staff that's coming in. Leonard Fournette is coming in, and they are going to be running the ball a ton. I don't think it's unrealistic to say that Blake Bortles is going to throw the ball 50, 60 times fewer times. I really don't think that's out of the question at all. And I don't think he's going to run for as many touchdowns or as many yards because Leonard Fournette is a better runner than he is. TJ Yeldon, maybe not so much. I think
more touchdowns are coming for Bortles, though. I actually think that. So, I mean, it's crazy. He's been in the league twice. He's been in the league 2 years. He's been number 4 among quarterbacks and number 9 among quarterbacks. And we're talking about him as like a QB 20?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like, the NFL, it changes very quickly. And like every situation that is playing into Blake Bortles' scenario right now is not good. You talk about the fact that their defense was getting better as the year went on, and they've gotten even better this offseason. Calais Campbell was a massive signing for them, among others, but that's just like the tip of the iceberg. That's a problem because that's going to naturally bring down
Bowie, one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL.
Exactly. No, yeah. So that on top of the fact that, the whole defense is better. We have the offense. They did draft. They went out there and drafted Cam Robinson, even though the Seattle Seahawks somehow passed on him. They drafted Leonard Fournette. They want to run the ball. And Blake Bortles, he has a new coaching staff coming in. I did an article a couple weeks ago talking about coaching staffs coming in. What does it mean when you have a new offensive coordinator and a new head coach? Or if you just have a new offensive coordinator, he has the biggest change that goes in the wrong direction for quarterbacks. When a new coaching staff comes in, they run the ball a lot more. They throw the ball on average about 30 times less per year. So with Bortles' situation, everything played into this. I really would not be shocked to see Bortles around 560, 570 attempts this year. And that, in my projections, brings him right around the QB 18 to QB 20 range.
All right, final one for you, Tags. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier when Jamey was talking about Big Ben, but over or under? For the third straight year, Big Ben finishes outside the top 17 quarterbacks.
Man, this comes back to injury because Ben Roethlisberger is one of those guys that misses a few games every single year. But, once, we talk about Roethlisberger a lot on this show. He's going to finish inside the top 17. I'll say that. But, once Martavis Bryant was reinstated and I knew he was on the team, and then once the Steelers drafted Juju Smith-Schuster, it forced me to return to my projections and change some things around. And that's why I mentioned with Jamey on that Roethlisberger at season's end, he's going to finish as a top 10 quarterback. I really believe that, but I would not draft him as such because he's unusable in half the games. We talked about that with Jake Seeley. I wouldn't rank him as low as Seeley did because I think Jake had him at 17 or 18. I know, Bobby, you're really low on him. I've moved him up right around to that QB 12 range because, again, pure projections, I have him as the number 7 quarterback, but I would not draft him there. I draft him right at the end of the QB1 range, top of the QB2, and pair him with someone like a Tyrod Taylor, like an Andy Dalton, players who I can alternate with him because, again, he has not been very good on the road, but overall, he'll finish inside the top 17.
He's good for MFL 10s, but that's a good distinction is, guys who will actually put up good numbers and guys who you want to draft based on being consistent and you can rely on them and they're not going to just kill your record. That makes a lot of sense. Now, Tags, I hate to tell you this, but you finished with negative points. I am going to give you like 5 friend points, though, so you did finish positive. You have 2 points. So that's a passing grade.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's good to know. I mean, and again, if you guys feel you're different with me, I'm always open to differing opinions. I just want good reasoning is all. I try and do my best to give you guys the reason I feel the way I do, and hopefully I did that.
Hey, by the way, if you guys heard anything on the Jake Seeley show that you disagreed with him on, be sure to hit him up on Twitter. He loves hearing from people that they disagree with him, right?
He's
Dex?
like the nicest guy, right?
he is a really nice guy.
No,
he's a unique personality, and it's a lot of fun. I love having him on.
Jake knows I'm messing with him. I love Jake.
Yeah. All right, Tags. Well, that's all we have for the show today, and it was a good one. So for those of you listening at home, make sure to enter the Le'Veon Bell jersey giveaway sweepstakes by Sunday. Subscribe and review us on iTunes. Screenshot it. Send this over to us at contest@fantasypros.com. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.